Hi, what I thought to talk about in this video is ways that you can control the way that the strings ring out when you're playing them. If you're used to playing the guitar, you're comfortable with the idea that you hit the string and it rings out. But sometimes the fact that the string's ringing out can actually kind of get in the way of what you're trying to do. I'll show you what I mean. If we play a rhythm part, here's a really simple chord progression, something that goes from say an E minor, down to D major, down to C major, down to a B minor. Now when you play it like that, it doesn't sound too bad. If we play it with a bit of rhythm on it, and we'll just let the strings ring out, does it sound so good? Now what's happening there is I'm just playing those chords and letting the notes ring out. You can hear the way that the chord progression is moving because you can hear the chords, but it doesn't work as well as a rhythm part as perhaps it could do. And the secret sometimes to playing a good rhythm part is actually to mute the strings and actually stop the strings ringing out. So what we're going to do now is play the same chord progression, but using that flat part along the side of the palm of my hand. I'm going to just rest that very gently on the strings. And what that allows me to do is actually deaden the way that the strings sound. So I can play the chord like that, with the strings unmuted, or with my palm touching the strings ever so slightly. Now that on its own might sound a bit strange, but listen to that within the context of a chord progression being played as a rhythm part, and actually it works quite well. See what I mean? Muting the strings just gives you that sort of percussive effect, and it stops the chords becoming kind of overwhelming. You can still hear the basic sound, but it's much more rhythmic. So what I'm doing with that is I'm just putting my hand, that sort of fleshy part at the side of the palm, on the strings at the bridge. Not really pressing down that hard, just enough to stop the strings from ringing out. If you play that chord, just put your hand down ever so slightly, you'll notice that the strings stop vibrating as you put your hand down. And that's kind of what you're going for. One thing you'll need to be careful of is if you've got a tremolo bridge, particularly if you've got like a locking trem like a Floyd Rose, something like this, is don't rest your hand right on the bridge block itself, because what you'll do is as you put pressure down, you'll actually bend the notes slightly out of tune as you put your pressure down on the bridge. All you really need to do is just touch the strings just enough to allow them to give you that dead sound rather than ringing out. And that palm muting, as it's called, is a real mainstay of like a good rock rhythm part. So playing something like with a power chord version of that progression, so like an E minor, an E power chord, down to D, down to C, and B. But I'm going to add in the bottom E string throughout all of that. Hear how that sounds. Now the reason that works so well is you've got that percussive sort of chugging of the bass notes, because we're muting the strings, we're not allowing them to ring out. Well, that works for rhythm playing, and that's often where you'll hear palm muting used. Muting the strings with your picking hand actually works quite well in lead playing as well. What I'm going to do now is just play a little like minor pentatonic, minor blues scale lick, And something that I do quite a lot when I'm playing around that sort of scale is actually mute the bass strings. I think it helps to give you a little bit more flavour to what you're doing, a bit more feel. Something like this. See what I mean? Rather than letting those bass notes ring out, I'm palm muting them. It just gives it a bit more tension, a bit more variety in what you play. Like I say, if you've got a tremolo bridge, you need to be a bit careful as you're putting the palm down that you don't knock the string slightly sharp. But it's a good technique to have, so do practice it. And especially if you're playing rhythm guitar, you know, don't just every time you play a chord let the chords ring out. Put a bit of muting in there, and it'll just help the rhythm part to work. You know, let the notes ring out when they need to, and just mute them slightly and make them more percussive when they're just carrying the rhythm part along. And then lead playing, to vary it a little bit, you know, mute some of those bass strings, or even some of the treble strings. To give it a bit of variety, to give it a bit of flavour. Okay, so another little technique for you to experiment with, include it in your practice routine, and see what you can come up with. Hope you found that useful, and I'll see you in another video sometime soon. Bye for now.